The unexpected encounter on a distant planet, far beyond the stars. An alien girl named Lyra stood silently, hidden among the shadows of towering trees. Her mission was simple: observe the humans, learn about them, and report back. Her species, the Varanites, had advanced far beyond humanity in technology and knowledge. They had watched Earth for centuries but never interfered. It was forbidden to make contact with them. Humans were considered too primitive, too unpredictable. And yet Lyra couldn't help but feel fascinated by their world. For days she had been observing from the safety of her cloaked ship, a sleek craft blending perfectly with the surroundings. She watched the humans go about their daily lives, their simple yet strange rituals. She had seen their wars, their love stories, their inventions, and even their struggles with nature. But despite all their flaws, something about them intrigued her. The humans were nothing like the Varanites. They lacked the advanced technology and wisdom of her kind, yet their emotions were raw and powerful. Lyra had often wondered what it would be like to feel the way they did, to experience the world through their eyes. Today, however, was different. Lyra's ship was not as hidden as it should have been. The humans were getting closer. She had to be careful, so careful. Her heart raced as she watched them move through the forest, unaware of her presence. There was one human in particular, a young man with dark hair and eyes that seemed to sparkle with curiosity. He was different from the others. She had watched him for days now, and somehow his presence made her feel something she couldn't explain. The moment came suddenly. She had been so focused on her observations that she didn't notice him approaching until it was too late. As she stepped back into the cover of the trees, her foot caught on a vine. With a gasp, she stumbled forward, crashing into him. Startled, the young man caught her by the arm to steady her. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and for a heartbeat, everything seemed to stop. The world around them faded away, and all that remained was the electric pulse of their touch. Lyra felt a strange surge in her chest, a warmth spreading through her body. She quickly pulled back, her heart pounding in her chest. What was that? Her thoughts raced, her mind struggling to process the sudden rush of feelings that flooded her senses. This was not supposed to happen. The Soulmate Indicator was something only a few beings across the galaxy ever experienced. It was a link, a connection between two souls meant to be together, a bond that couldn't be ignored. But the rule was clear: no Varanite was ever to touch a human. And yet, here she was, caught in a moment she didn't know how to explain. The human looked at her with confusion in his eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft and concerned. Lyra froze. She didn't know how to respond. Should she speak? Should she run? But no matter how much she wanted to leave, something was pulling her back. That connection, that pulse, it was undeniable. She wasn't just any observer anymore. The rules had changed in that single moment, and now she was facing the most unexpected encounter of her life. A deep sense of dread washed over her, and she realized one thing clearly. Her mission was no longer the priority. Something far more complicated had just begun. The shock of the activation, Lyra stumbled back, her heart hammering in her chest, her mind spinning in a whirlpool of confusion. Her eyes were locked on the human before her, but everything around her felt distant, like the world had slowed down. The touch, just a brief contact, a simple brush of fingers, had sparked something inside her, something that shouldn't have been possible. For a moment she thought it was a glitch, a malfunction in her senses. Perhaps the strange pull she felt wasn't real. But the feeling lingered, growing stronger with every heartbeat. The warmth spreading through her veins wasn't from her own body. It was from him. The human. The one she was never meant to touch. Her breath quickened as she glanced down at her wrist. There on her skin, the faint glow of a hidden symbol began to pulse softly. It was the Soulmate Indicator. Impossible. The Soulmate Indicator was a rare phenomenon among her kind, and to think it could activate with a human. The rules of the Varanites were clear. Never engage with humans. Never allow the indicator to flare up. It was a forbidden connection. and the consequences for crossing that line were severe. But Lyra felt the pull, an undeniable force tugging her heart in ways she had never felt before. It was like her soul recognized his, even though she didn't fully understand it. The human, still holding her arm, seemed as confused as she felt. He blinked rapidly, his dark eyes searching hers for an explanation. "Are you okay?" he asked again, his voice uncertain but kind. There was a tenderness in his tone that almost felt like a ripple through her own chest, as if his words were a thread pulling her closer to him. She couldn't speak. No words came. Her training, her mission, everything she had been taught, faded in that moment. The girl who had always been distant, detached, now found herself in the presence of something far greater than herself. A feeling she couldn't control, a bond she didn't ask for. Lyra pulled her arm away, her mind racing. What was she supposed to do? She had never been trained for this. In all her studies about Earth and its people, nothing had prepared her for the sheer intensity of what was happening right now. The symbol on her wrist continued to pulse as though in sync with the rapid beat of her heart. It was undeniable. Her soulmate. He was standing right in front of her, and everything she knew about the universe was suddenly turned upside down. She stepped back, but the pull was there, like an invisible string tethering them together. She wanted to run to get away from him, from this strange, impossible situation, but the pull grew stronger, and the world seemed to close in around her. The stars above, the distant hum of her ship in the forest, everything faded into the background. She turned her back on him, desperately trying to regain control, but her legs felt weak beneath her. The touch had altered something in her, something deep inside. It was like her entire being was resonating with his existence, her soul now inexplicably linked to his. Was this fate? Was this connection a mistake? Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, but deep down one truth remained clear. She couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. And just as she was about to flee into the safety of the trees, a quiet voice called out, "Wait." She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The human had followed her. He didn't know what was happening, but something inside him knew she couldn't leave, and something inside her knew she couldn't run. Not from him. Not from this. The question now wasn't whether she would walk away. The question was, could she ever return to the life she had before? Hidden secrets. The days that followed were nothing like Lyra had expected. She had planned to return to her mission, to leave the human behind and carry on with her observations. But the connection between them, a connection she couldn't explain, kept pulling at her, like an invisible tether she could not cut. Lyra's mind buzzed with confusion. Every time she tried to rationalize what had happened, the facts didn't line up. The Soulmate Indicator should have never activated. She had learned all about it in her training, how it was meant for higher beings, not humans. Yet, here she was, stuck in the most impossible situation of her life, and the glow of the indicator was still faintly pulsing on her wrist, a constant reminder of the bond she shared with this stranger from a distant world. She could not ignore it, not anymore. The human's name she remembered now was Ethan. He had followed her after their first encounter, and against all odds, she hadn't run. The bond between them was undeniable, and each moment she spent near him only made it stronger. He didn't know what she was, didn't know anything about her kind or the rules she lived by, but that didn't seem to matter. He treated her like a person, not some alien entity. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt seen. The strange thing was, Ethan seemed to feel it too. He was drawn to her, as though some unseen force was guiding him toward her. In every glance, every quiet conversation, there was something magnetic between them, as if their souls were meant to intertwine. The more time she spent near him, the more she realized he was different from other humans she had studied. Ethan wasn't just any person. There was something special about him, something that made Lyra's instinct scream that he was more connected to the larger universe than he knew. She began to watch him closely, from the shadows, as she had done with other humans. But this time, it wasn't out of curiosity alone. She needed answers. She needed to understand why this human was different, why the Soulmate Indicator had activated with him when it had never done so with any other human before. She discovered strange patterns in his life, patterns that shouldn't have existed. Unexplainable events followed him wherever he went. The mysterious disappearances of small objects around him, the way animals seemed to follow his movements, the faint glow that surrounded him when he wasn't looking. It was as though the universe itself bent in his presence, subtly and powerfully reshaping the world around him. And then, one night, as she watched from a distance, something extraordinary happened. Ethan stood on a quiet hill, his hands outstretched to the stars as if calling out to something above. His eyes filled with wonder gazed at the sky. But it wasn't the sky he was looking at. It was something far beyond, something Lyra couldn't see. The glow around him intensified, and for a brief moment, the stars themselves seemed to shimmer in response. A cold chill ran down Lyra's spine. She had seen this before, on her homeworld, in the ancient texts of her people. It was a sign that Ethan wasn't just any human. He was linked to the greater forces of the universe just like her. But what did that mean? How could a human, someone so far removed from her world, have this kind of connection? As the night wore on, Lyra's questions grew more urgent. She needed to know everything about him. She needed to understand why her Soulmate Indicator had activated for him, and what role he played in the cosmic scheme of things. There were too many secrets, too many hidden truths that needed to be uncovered. And for the first time in her life, Lyra realized that she wasn't just observing. She was part of something much larger, something that neither she nor Ethan could escape. The universe had brought them together. But why? And how much danger was she willing to face to uncover the truth? First confrontation. The air around Lyra felt thick with tension as she stood on the edge of the forest, watching Ethan from a distance. The evening sky had dipped into twilight, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Tonight there would be no more hiding. There would be no more shadows to conceal her. The pull, the undeniable connection between them, had become too strong. Every moment she spent near him made her realize that the distance between them was an illusion, a barrier she could no longer maintain. Ethan had been searching for answers, just like her. He had noticed the strange pull between them, and he hadn't stopped trying to figure it out. Lyra had hoped to keep her true nature hidden, to remain a silent observer in the background of his life. But now, as the sun set and darkness took hold, she knew she could no longer stand by. She had to confront him. The idea terrified her, but it also thrilled her. What would happen when he learned the truth? Could he even understand it? Could anyone? She was from another world, and the bond that tied them together was as ancient as the stars themselves. How could she explain that? How could she even begin to make him understand the weight of what they shared? As Lyra stepped forward, the underbrush crunched beneath her boots. Ethan, standing by the water's edge, stiffened, sensing her approach. His back was to her, but he didn't need to see her to know she was there. There was something in the air, an energy that surrounded them both like the world was pushing them together. "Lyra," he said, his voice low but steady. He didn't turn around, but he didn't need to. The way he said her name made her heart skip a beat. He knew. She stopped just behind him, unsure of what to say. His presence was magnetic, and it was all she could do to keep her feet rooted to the ground. The pull between them was overwhelming, and yet there was an underlying sense of fear too. Fear of the unknown, of the consequences that would follow the truth. "You're not just a human, are you?" Ethan finally asked, his voice breaking the silence. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "I can feel it. There's something different about you. Something not human." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. He had sensed it. He could feel it too. That strange energy, that connection. The truth was out, and there was no going back now. "No, I'm not human," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Her words seemed to echo in the vastness of the forest, as though they were more significant than anything she had ever said before. I'm not from this world. Ethan turned around slowly, his eyes searching hers for the truth. He wasn't afraid, though the shock was clear in his gaze. He had been expecting something different, something less impossible. But here she was standing before him, revealing a truth that defied everything he thought he knew about the universe. What are you? He asked, his voice a mixture of wonder and disbelief. Lyra hesitated for a moment, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had spent her whole life following the rules, following orders. But the moment they had touched, all of that had changed. Now she had to tell him. She had to reveal everything. I am from a distant world, she began, her voice steadying as she spoke. My people, the Varanites, have been watching humans for centuries. We've studied you from afar, but we are forbidden from making contact. You are not supposed to be part of this. Ethan stepped closer, his curiosity growing with every word. What do you mean? What's not supposed to happen? She looked down at her wrist, where the Soulmate Indicator had now dimmed to a faint glow. Her heart thudded in her chest. The truth was simple, yet complicated beyond belief. When I touched you, she said softly, my Soulmate Indicator activated. That's something that never happens with humans. It's not just a malfunction. It's a connection, a bond that ties two beings together across space and time. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, processing the words. His eyes searched her face, trying to understand the enormity of what she was saying. You're saying we're soulmates? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra nodded, the words feeling strange on her tongue. They were true, but they were also so much more than that. Their bond wasn't just a feeling. It was a cosmic force, a universal connection that could not be easily explained. Yes, she replied, her voice firm but filled with uncertainty. We are. And that means something bigger than either of us can understand. But there's more. There are consequences. My people, the Varanites, won't let this stand. I was never supposed to touch you, never supposed to feel this connection. But now that it's happened, there's no turning back. Ethan's gaze hardened, but it wasn't fear he showed. It was resolve. He stepped closer to her, the air between them charged with something that felt like destiny. Then let's figure this out together, he said, his voice steady and determined. We'll face whatever comes. I don't care who you are or where you're from. You're here now, and I don't want to let you go. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. For the first time since she had activated the Soulmate Indicator, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Alien World's dilemma. Lyra's heart was a storm of emotions as she stood beside Ethan. The connection between them, the pull she had tried to avoid, had now completely entwined their fates. But as they stood together, facing the unknown, a chilling reality set in. The truth had not only bound them, it had also placed them in mortal danger. The Varanites would not allow this. There was no way they would let her, one of their own, continue to defy their laws. The Galactic Council had been strict for centuries, no interference with lesser species. The consequences for violating this rule were severe, and in her case, the violation was far worse than simple disobedience. The Soulmate Indicator wasn't just an abstract concept. It was a bond that was both physical and spiritual, an ancient connection that carried with it the weight of destiny. And if it was discovered that she had broken the law, the Council would act swiftly. The penalty for activating the indicator with a human was not just exile, it was far worse. Exile could be tolerated, but this was an act of universal defiance. Lyra's mind raced, each thought clouded with the fear of what her people would do. She had been trained to follow orders, to be a silent observer. But now, she couldn't run from the truth any longer. The truth that she had already crossed a line. That the one being who could tear her life apart, the very same being who had always been her closest ally, was the one she was connected to in ways no one could understand. A low hum in the distance caught her attention, It was the unmistakable sound of a Veronite transmission, slicing through the air like an invisible knife. Her ship was receiving a signal, a warning. She turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "They know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "My people, the Veronites, they know about us. They know about the Soulmate Indicator. And they're coming." Ethan's expression hardened. He wasn't afraid, but he understood what was at stake now. "What does that mean? Are they going to hurt you?" Lyra's gaze darkened. "They won't just hurt me. They'll destroy everything we've built, everything I've learned. This bond between us, it's a threat to their control. To them, it's a violation of the natural order." Ethan stepped closer, reaching for her hand. "Then we fight. We don't have to let them tear us apart. We can figure this out, together." Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of his hand, a comfort amidst the chaos. Together. Could they really fight against a force that was so much bigger than either of them? Could a human, someone she had never thought would have any role in her life, stand against her own people, her own kind? The question was terrifying, but in his touch, in his voice, she felt a stirring of hope she hadn't known existed. Perhaps it wasn't about fighting the Veronites. Perhaps it was about challenging the very rules of the universe itself. Perhaps their bond was meant to change everything. "We need to leave," Lyra said, her voice firm now, as the weight of the situation pressed down on her. "They'll be here soon. If we stay here, we won't survive. We have to go somewhere no one will find us. We have to find answers together." Ethan nodded, but there was no fear in his eyes, only determination. "Where do we go?" Lyra glanced toward the stars above, the glowing constellation of her home world somewhere in the distance. She knew where they had to go, but she also knew it would be dangerous. If she took Ethan to her people's world, it would be an act of rebellion. But it was the only way to truly understand what had happened to them. "There's a place," she said quietly. "It's a hidden world. My people don't know about it. If we go there, we'll have a chance to learn more about the Soulmate Indicator and about what it means for us." The road ahead was uncertain. Lyra knew the risks. Her people would be relentless in their pursuit, and Ethan was not ready for what lay beyond the veil of their world. But there was no turning back now. The universe had already set its course, and they were just two pieces in a much larger puzzle. Lyra turned to face Ethan, her expression resolute. "We leave now. The Veronites are coming for us. We don't have time to waste." With a final lingering glance at the earth behind them, they set off, knowing that everything had changed. The future was a blur of uncertainty and danger, but together they would face it, no matter what came next. The countdown had begun, a heartfelt decision. The journey was nothing like Lyra had imagined. As they ventured further from Earth, leaving behind the quiet forests and the world Ethan had always known, the weight of their decision settled heavily on both of them. The stars above seemed to mock them with their endless, indifferent glow, while the ship's hum was a constant reminder of the perilous path they had chosen. Lyra had never considered what it would feel like to break the rules of her people, to go against everything she had been taught. She had lived her life as an observer, never engaging, never crossing the line. But now that line was gone. She had crossed it, and so had Ethan. They had made a choice, one that could tear apart everything they knew, and yet neither of them hesitated. In the quiet hum of their ship, the tension between them was palpable. Lyra could feel it, like the calm before a storm. Ethan had been silent for a while, lost in thought, his face shadowed by the dim light of the control panel. He wasn't afraid, not of her, not of her people, but there was something else in his eyes. He had questions. So many questions. "You haven't told me everything," he finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady but edged with the unease Lyra had felt ever since they left Earth. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had known this moment was coming. She had hoped it wouldn't, that she could protect him from the darker truths of her world. But the longer they stayed together, the more inevitable it became. You're right, she said softly, her eyes fixed on the starry expanse outside the ship's window. The vastness of the universe seemed to mock her, to remind her that she was a speck in something so much greater than herself. There's a lot you don't know, Ethan. There are things about me, about my people, that I haven't shared. Ethan turned to face her now, his eyes searching hers. He wasn't angry. He was confused, concerned, worried. Then tell me. I need to know, Lyra. I need to understand what this connection really means, what we're walking into. I want to be with you. But if I'm going to face this, if we're going to face this, then I need to know everything. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. His words, so simple yet so powerful, pierced through the wall she had built around herself. For the first time, she saw the depth of Ethan's commitment, the raw vulnerability in his voice. This wasn't just about a bond between them anymore. It wasn't just about destiny. This was about trust, about love. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet of the ship wash over her as she gathered the strength to share the truth. My people, the Varanites, are bound by rules that govern every aspect of our existence. We're not allowed to interfere with other species. Not like this. The Soulmate Indicator is a relic, something ancient that we've been forbidden to activate. It's a symbol of fate, of an unbreakable bond that connects two beings across space and time. But it's not just a bond, it's a power that my people believe should never be unleashed with someone as primitive as a human. Ethan's expression darkened, but he didn't interrupt. He was listening, his attention fully on her. If they find out what's happened between us, they'll come for us. They won't just try to stop us, they'll destroy everything. My people value control above all else. And a connection like ours, it's a threat to their entire way of life. They'll see us as a danger, and they'll do everything in their power to break us apart. Lyra paused, her heart pounding in her chest. There it was, the truth, the heart of their situation. But, even as she spoke the words, she knew the next question that would follow. Do you think I'm worth it? She asked softly, her voice trembling in a way she hadn't expected. Do you think it's worth fighting for, even if it means losing everything? The silence in the room stretched on, thick and heavy, until Ethan's voice finally broke through the quiet. I don't know what the future holds, he said, his voice steady and unwavering. But I do know that what we have, it's real. I've never felt anything like it before. And I don't care where you come from or who your people are. I don't care about the rules that bind you. If you're willing to fight for us, I'll fight for you. His words settled deep into her chest, and for the first time since this journey began, Lyra felt the weight of her decision shift. Together, they had stepped into the unknown. And together, they would face whatever came next. I never thought I'd have to make this choice, Lyra said quietly, her gaze locked with his. But now that I have, there's no turning back. I'm choosing you, Ethan. I'm choosing us. Ethan reached out, taking her hand gently in his. The warmth of his touch spread through her, calming the storm inside her. The decision had been made. There would be no going back. Whatever the universe had in store for them, they would face it together. And in that moment, Lyra knew something that she had never understood before. Sometimes, the greatest act of courage wasn't facing the enemy. It was making the decision to stand side by side with the one you loved, no matter the cost. The great reveal and cliffhanger. The air in the ship was thick with anticipation as Lyra and Ethan approached the hidden world, the place Lyra had spoken of, a sanctuary where they could find the answers they sought. But as they drew closer, an eerie silence seemed to engulf the ship. The hum of the engines, once steady and reassuring, now sounded distant, hollow. It was as though the universe itself was holding its breath. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than either of them understood. They had been running from their fate, from the consequences of their bond, but now the truth was closing in on them, unavoidable. This is it, she said quietly, her fingers tracing the controls as they navigated through the atmosphere of the hidden world. Her heart raced, but there was no turning back now. Ethan stood beside her, his expression unreadable, but she could feel his steady presence beside her. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead. The planet before them was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. It wasn't a lush green paradise or a barren wasteland. No, this world was filled with ancient, crumbling structures that rose from the ground like forgotten monuments to a civilization long past. The sky above was a deep purple, swirling with clouds that seemed to move in unnatural patterns, as though the very atmosphere was alive with energy. The place radiated a strange power, a force that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. Lyra had only visited this world once, a long time ago, when she was still a child. Her people had never spoken of it openly. It was a place of forbidden knowledge, hidden away from the eyes of the Varanites. No one was ever meant to know it existed. But now Lyra understood why it was so important. Here, the answers would be found. Here they would uncover the truth about the Soulmate Indicator and the connection between her and Ethan. They landed in a clearing, surrounded by towering, jagged rocks that seemed to guard the entrance to what lay beyond. Lyra hesitated before stepping out of the ship. The air was thick with tension, and she felt the weight of the past pressing down on her. She wasn't just stepping onto an alien world. She was stepping into her own history, a history that had been hidden from her for as long as she could remember. Ethan, sensing her unease, placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone," he said softly. His voice was a steady anchor in the storm of her thoughts. Lyra nodded, grateful for his presence, but the truth was she didn't know if she was ready to face what was coming. The Varanites would be searching for them soon. They would not stop until they had brought them back or destroyed everything in their path. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, Lyra's eyes darted around, watching for any sign of danger. The structures around them were ancient, worn down by centuries of neglect. The air hummed with a low vibration, a strange energy that seemed to pulse from the very ground beneath their feet. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, his voice breaking the silence. "To the center," Lyra replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "The answers are there. But be careful. This place is not just a sanctuary, it's a place of power." They reached the heart of the ruins, a massive stone structure that looked as though it had been carved from the very mountain itself. Symbols, strange and glowing, adorned the walls, pulsing with an energy Lyra could feel deep in her bones. The Soulmate Indicator on her wrist flickered in response to the energy, glowing brighter with each step they took toward the heart of the structure. When they finally reached the center, Lyra stopped, her eyes wide with disbelief. The air crackled with an almost tangible force. It was as though the very fabric of the universe had been woven into this place. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it, a glowing orb, an artifact of unimaginable power. "This is it?" Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "The source of the Soulmate Indicator, the reason it exists, the reason we're connected." Ethan stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the orb. "What is it? What does it mean?" Before Lyra could answer, a sudden tremor shook the ground beneath them. The walls around them began to shift, the symbols glowing brighter as the energy intensified. Something was happening, something she had not anticipated. A voice, ancient and deep, echoed through the room. "You should not have come here." Lyra spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Standing in the doorway was a figure, a being she recognized from her studies of Varanite history. A guardian, a protector of the ancient knowledge. But this guardian was different. Its eyes glowed with a fierce light, and its presence radiated power, ancient and untouchable. "This is forbidden," the guardian intoned, its voice resonating with a deep, otherworldly echo. "You have broken the laws of the universe. The bond you share will tear the fabric of existence itself." Lyra stepped forward, her pulse racing. "I didn't choose this," The Soulmate Indicator activated on its own. We didn't ask for this connection. The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter. It matters not. The bond has been made, and now the consequences must unfold. The ground beneath them rumbled again, and Lyra felt a cold chill run down her spine. Something was coming, something far worse than they had imagined. The ancient forces of the universe were stirring, and their fate was no longer in their hands. As the Guardian raised its hand, a blinding light filled the room, and Lyra could hear Ethan's voice calling out to her. But it was too late. The light enveloped them both, and the world around them began to fade.